There's a button. I'm on. Excellent.
Good. So, Paul, 15 minutes.
Okay, you want me to use 15 minutes, or because I'm?
Minutes.
Is there cake?
Yeah, there's cake.
Okay, so I'll do 10 minutes. Okay. Yeah, I realise I'm between everybody and the tea break and the cake. Mo has promised cake. Okay. Hi everybody. I'm Paul Rayson. I'm from InfoLab, a few hundred yards down that way. Computing Communications at Lancaster University. There is cake. There's a thumbs up. Excellent. But today I am pretending to be Martin Wynne, who I believe Mo and Sad invited to give a talk about CLARIN. So I've mercilessly nicked Martin's slides from a workshop that we ran here last summer in July, and I realised I didn't put the link to that workshop in the slide, so I can add it or share it with Mo later on. We ran a couple of hour workshop last year in the Corpus Linguistics conference here, so there's kind of a lot more detail in those slides and some hands-on exercises with some of the corpora and tools that are in CLARIN. So if you don't know what CLARIN is, I'll give you a few slides on that. CLARIN is the Common Language Resources and Technology Infrastructure. It's lost in the mist of time as to what CLARIN acronym actually is in relation to that. But since 2012, so in the early stages it was funded by the EU, but then more recently it's national funding that's taken over from that. The aims, as you can see there, is to provide a kind of umbrella infrastructure to enable researchers such as ourselves to give easy and sustainable access for people not just in computational linguistics community, but more widely than that. So it's not just text data, it's not just written data, but it could be speech, video, multimodal data as well. The aim is to abide by the FAIR principles, and I'll always forget one of the names: findable, accessible, interoperable, reusable. Yes, possibly. Those to enable kind of that infrastructure to provide that ability to find the data, to have easy access to it, to be able to interoperate with it. So it's also software tools as well as the language resources themselves. So I'll make sure that we've got the slides shared for all of the links in the talk as well. So one more map to finish the day. CLARIN has 24 members. So yeah, these slides, the numbers on these have been updated since last summer. 24 members. Spain was the most recent addition, I believe. 2 observers, including the UK. And also, as you can see, there are some members outside of the EU as well. So overall, it's now this very large community of 60 plus centres operating, as I say, in accordance with these FAIR principles to enable that access to these language resources through a federated login, through metadata harvesting for easy discovery and so on. So if you're looking at the map, there are some obvious gaps in there. The little dots, hopefully you can see those, do represent the different centres. So there's a lot to the CLARIN network and infrastructure. I'll mainly focus on the language resource switchboard and the virtual language observatory, and come back to one of the others at the end. They all have some lovely clip art there. The virtual language observatory, I guess, is supposed to be a telescope pointing out of a domed building, but as a Doctor Who fan, to me, it looks like a Dalek, right? So anyway, so just those two, the switchboard, one in the centre, and the VLO, I'll mainly focus on. Those are the ones where we can find and access and search corpus resources and other data. So just a short list of different types of data in the archive, some more corpus shaped than others, I guess you could say. So newspaper archives, literary text, social media, oral history, broadcast archives, as much as possible available to everybody within the network. And also you can access some of these resources beyond the network as well if you apply. So the way that they've started to, or they or we have started to group these together is through the resource families. So I guess if you're old enough, you might remember the kind of virtual libraries on the internet. These are kind of the way where we would browse to. If we're interested in L2 Learner Corpora, we could start with the resource family in that area, or we could search for, or we could find a tool for normalization or named entity recognition and so on. So there's another web page linked there you can find. So originally, I guess it started with communities of computational linguists, but really the idea now, and what we've been particularly involved in as ambassadors, is expanding out these communities of use into other areas where similar resources, tools and techniques would be applicable. So digital humanities, yeah, we do sometimes talk to linguists, literary studies, history, media studies, all the way down to, well, up to the general public. But obviously, people wouldn't necessarily think to search these things first. So that's kind of one of the challenges of getting this news out there. Interoperability is key. I don't quite know how the clip art works with that, but the idea would be originally to enable all of these disparate communities to come together, the research centres to work together to have these resources in that one simple, straightforward ecosystem, so that it's easier to access. It doesn't get lost if a particular language archive closes, or if GitHub ever closes, we're in trouble, right? So I'll focus in on Parliament in a minute, just to give you one of the flagship projects. So it's not just corpus resources in terms of corpora or lexicons or dictionaries and so on, but also the software tools that we might want to use. Corpus query systems mainly. You'll probably know some of these things in the list. Corp, no sketch engine's already been mentioned earlier on. But then there's the federated content search with that link at the bottom, where the idea is you can do one query and it will point you to resources which you can then step to and get into more detail with those resources particularly. So I was a little bit scared putting this slide together last week. I was afraid of having zero search hits on all the languages that were mentioned in the call for this workshop, but pleasantly surprised that there are some in there. So in the VLO, as you can see, 26 corpora of Welsh, 1 corpus of Middle Welsh, 61 Irish, etc., etc. You can read the list. But slightly embarrassed to say there are 0 language resources in terms of tools in the switchboard interface. So I've taken an action to at least add all of the Corkenc ones and subsequent projects that we've been working on. Martin also is the head of the Oxford Text Archive and asked me to point out that there are many items in Welsh as well, and 4 in Irish, as you can see, with those links there to the slides. So yes, as I say, these are more or less corpus shaped. Probably we wouldn't necessarily claim that all of these are representative. Many of these would be Wikipedia, and I think the entries in the universal dependencies is in there as well. Okay, so I'll just, and I have no idea how long I've got left, but I'll give you a quick rundown of one of the flagship projects, which is Parliament. Oh, sorry, another map for you to look at. So Parliament, with the link there, it's in 2 phases over the last few years. We've worked together with many centres around Europe to create this comparable, uniformly annotated, freely available corpus or corpora of parliamentary debates across Europe. I mean, obviously you can spot where the gaps are, which I'll come back to in a minute. Multiple versions of this have been released, and the idea that it's consistent, TEI, encoded data, multiply processed through a number of different pipelines, spacey in our case, but other tools as well, and then uniformly formatted, made available in no sketch engine corpus query tools in all of the cases. The most recent releases, there's a link to that one. There's the original text. There's, in some cases, the audio recordings where they were available to be released. And then usually part of speech tagged as well. Overall, for that release, 7.8 million utterances, 1.2 billion words, 29 languages. And so that's a chart going left in terms of the period of years, coverage for each of the data sets, and the chart on the right, the corpus size in terms of millions of words. So you can see, if you know your two-letter country codes, that there are some of the regional devolved parliaments in there as well. But there are, for this community here in this workshop, there are some obvious gaps which you might have spotted that related to the languages we're looking at here, which I think would be really good to fill those in Parliament. So more links there from to various resources in the CLARIN infrastructure, and then just to finish up, a couple of slides on what we're doing here in the UK. Martin's the head of the CLARIN UK kind of informal consortium. We're not funded in the UK. We're a kind of observer status in CLARIN infrastructure in general, but there's a whole set of centres within the UK, as you can see listed there. And then, and I can't remember when the conference is, Mo, that you're going to in Cork. I think there's, yeah, so the Martin and Mo will be going to present on this. We're proposing a CLARIN Knowledge Centre, which is one of those other types of resources that I didn't really go into much detail on, but it's a kind of one-stop shop advice centre, if you like, these CLARIN Knowledge Centres on various topics. We're proposing digital resources for languages in Ireland and Britain, CLARIN Knowledge Centre, which will be, as you can see, virtual and distributed with a central online presence and contact point, and then any kind of questions that come in will be passed out to other people in the Knowledge Centre to answer as well. So, as Martin writes there, yes, please do get involved if you would like to. And I think that's me done.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Right. Any questions for Paul?
How did you finish in that time?
It was the promise of cake. I have no idea what time I started, but that was maybe 5 or 10 minutes.
Well, thank you very much.